Florence in the time of the Medici was a glittering, brutal, and utterly fascinating place. Gold flowed like wine, power was absolute, and secrets whispered through frescoed halls. But beneath the velvet cloaks and solemn pronouncements, another world thrived. It was a world of laughter, biting wit, scandalous performances, and dazzling artistry. A world crafted by the very people the Medici kept closest for their diversion, the jesters and entertainers. These weren't just funny men or pretty faces, they were the confidantes, the truth-tellers, the escape artists who navigated a treacherous court where one wrong joke could cost everything. They saw things no one else did, knew secrets no one dared speak, and held a strange, powerful influence over the rulers of Tuscany. Their lives were dramas, their performances legends, and their legacies, though often overlooked, are as compelling as any Medici prince. Number 1, Pietro Folco, known as Il Dotto. In the sprawling, opulent world of Cosimo I de' Medici's court, where serious affairs of state and matters of war often dominated conversation, there was a man whose sharp intellect and quick tongue cut through the gravity. This was Pietro Folco, universally known as Il Dotto, the Learned One. Unlike many of his jester counterparts who relied on physical gags or simple mockery, Il Dotto engaged the minds of his patrons with intricate wordplay, philosophical debates, and satirical observations that held a mirror up to the very society he served. He was a paradox, a jester whose primary tool was not a bladder on a stick but a mind as keen as any scholar in the Medici academies. Born in humble circumstances, Pietro Folco's path to the ducal court was not one paved by lineage or wealth, but by sheer intellectual prowess. And records from the Palazzo Pitti indicate that Cosimo I, always a shrewd judge of character and talent, first noticed Folco for his ability to debate complex theological points with visiting clerics, despite his lack of formal clerical training. He had an uncanny knack for dissecting arguments, exposing fallacies, and then, with a twinkle in his eye, turning the entire discussion on its head with a perfectly timed, witty retort. This was a man who could outthink a cardinal and then make him laugh at his own foolishness. His performances were not grand theatrical spectacles in the traditional sense. Instead, they were more akin to intellectual duels, often staged informally during banquets or private gatherings in Cosimo's study. One evening, during a particularly dry discussion about the merits of different Roman emperors, Il Dotto, without missing a beat, interjected that the greatest emperor was surely the one who required the fewest monuments, for his greatness was etched in the hearts of his people, not in stone. The observation, delivered with mock solemnity, caused Cosimo to burst into laughter, breaking the stifling atmosphere of the scholarly debate. It was a subtle yet profound jibe at the Medici's own penchant for monumental architecture. Il Dotto's humor was often layered, requiring a certain level of intellect from his audience to fully appreciate. He might quote a passage from Seneca, only to then twist its meaning into a critique of contemporary Florentine politics. He was a master of the double entendre, his words carrying multiple meanings, allowing him to deliver sharp truths veiled in jest. This made him a favorite among the more intellectually inclined courtiers, though some of the less astute members of the court found him baffling, or even a little intimidating. He was the jester who made you think, sometimes even when you did not want to. Historical accounts suggest that Il Dotto had a particularly close relationship with Cosimo I. The Duke, a man of formidable intelligence himself, appreciated Folco's ability to challenge his thoughts without truly offending him. Folco was one of the few who could speak uncomfortable truths to the Duke, often through the guise of a clever riddle or a humorous anecdote. One time, when Cosimo was particularly vexed by a bureaucratic tangle, Il Dotto remarked that governing was like wrestling 1,000 worms, each with its own tiny, independent will, all wriggling in different directions. Cosimo, despite his frustration, reportedly found the image so apt that he used it himself in subsequent conversations with his ministers. Pietro Folco's presence at court was a constant reminder that power, even absolute power, could still be examined, questioned, and even gently mocked. He served as a crucial outlet for the tensions of the court, a safety valve for the Duke's own anxieties, and a source of genuine intellectual stimulation. His life story demonstrates that not all jesters were defined by their physical peculiarities or their crude jokes. Some, like Il Dotto, wielded words as their weapons, wits as their armor, and intellect as their greatest performance. His legacy was not one of boisterous laughter, but of quiet, thoughtful smiles and the satisfying click of a complex idea falling perfectly into place. He was a jester for the mind, and his performances were lessons in the art of cleverness. Number 2, Francesco di Tommaso da Sangallo, known as Il Marzocco. Amidst the refined elegance of the Medici court, a stark contrast to the intellectual wit of someone like Il Dotto presented itself in the form of Francesco di Tommaso da Sangallo, known throughout Florence as Il Marzocco. His nickname, referencing the lion symbol of Florence, was a nod to his physical presence and robust, often boisterous brand of humor. Il Marzocco was not a jester of subtle verbal dexterity. He was a jester of grand gestures, physical comedy, and raw, often crude, entertainment. He was the kind of fool who could make even the most stoic duke crack a genuine belly laugh. Il Marzocco's fame did not stem from a noble lineage or academic achievement. Instead, it was his sheer comedic talent, honed in the bustling markets and popular festivals of Florence, that brought him to the attention of Cosimo I. Records indicate that he possessed a remarkable ability for mimicry, grotesque facial expressions, and exaggerated movements that could instantly transform a tense atmosphere into one of uproarious mirth. He was a master of slapstick, a jester who was not afraid to make a fool of himself in the most literal sense, all for the amusement of his powerful patrons. His performances were often spontaneous and unscripted. During a lavish banquet, if the conversation grew too stiff, Il Marzocco might suddenly launch into a ridiculous imitation of a pompous ambassador, complete with exaggerated bows and nonsensical pronouncements. He was known for his impromptu dances, often performed with a clumsy grace that defied his size, leading to comical tumbles and flails that would send the courtiers into fits of laughter. He reveled in chaos, using it as his stage. One famous anecdote tells of Il Marzocco being tasked by Cosimo I to lighten the mood during a particularly frustrating council meeting. Instead of speaking, Il Marzocco reportedly entered the room dressed in mismatched clothing, with a large, artificial nose attached to his face, and proceeded to conduct the bickering counselors with a wooden spoon as if they were an unruly orchestra. He mimicked their gestures, amplified their grumbling sounds, and at one point pretended to trip over his own feet, sending a stack of papers scattering. The unexpected absurdity broke the tension, allowing Cosimo to regain control of the meeting, his face flushed with amusement. Il Marzocco's humor was often earthy, reflecting the common man's perspective, which some courtiers found shocking, but many others, including Cosimo, found refreshing. He was unafraid to poke fun at the mundane absurdities of daily life, the vanity of fashion, or the everyday frustrations of common people. He might tell a story about a hapless baker or a confused peasant, all performed with such vivid characterization and hilarious voice changes that the court felt transported from their grand halls into the streets of Florence. He served as a bridge between the rarefied world of the Duke and the vibrant, messy reality outside the palace walls. Despite his crude methods, Il Marzocco occupied a unique and valued position. He was a jester who understood the power of catharsis through laughter. In a court where etiquette and appearance were paramount, his willingness to be utterly undignified offered a momentary release for everyone. He was a reminder that even dukes and duchesses, beneath their elaborate attire, were still human beings capable of needing a good, honest laugh. His existence highlights the diversity of entertainment forms embraced by the Medici, proving that they appreciated not only high culture and intellectual pursuits, but also the unvarnished, boisterous joy that a truly gifted physical comedian could bring. His legacy was not one of refined wit, but of hearty guffaws, widespread smiles, and the sheer unadulterated joy of simple, powerful comedy. Number 3, Bernardo Accolti, known as l'unico Aretino. In the vibrant tapestry of the Florentine Renaissance, where words were often as powerful as swords, Bernardo Accolti shone as a star, celebrated as l'unico Aretino, the unique one from Arezzo. He was not a jester in the traditional sense of a cap and bells fool, but rather a master improvisational poet and orator whose wit, eloquence, and theatrical flair made him an essential and highly sought-after entertainer at the courts of popes and princes, including those intimately connected with the Medici. His performances were not mere recitations, they were intellectual feasts, verbal fireworks, and passionate declarations that captivated his audiences. Born in Arezzo, Bernardo Accolti's talent for spontaneous verse and captivating rhetoric emerged early. He possessed an uncanny ability to compose complex poems and speeches on the spot, weaving intricate rhymes and profound ideas into a seamless flow of words. His reputation spread rapidly, reaching the ears of the Medici, particularly through his association with Pope Leo X, Giovanni de' Medici. Leo X, a great patron of the arts and letters, admired Accolti's genius, and it was in Rome, often in the presence of Medici cardinals and dignitaries, that l'unico Aretino truly flourished. Accolti's performances were highly anticipated events. He would often hold court himself, surrounded by an eager audience hanging on his every word. He might be given a random theme, a historical figure, or a philosophical concept, and then, with barely a pause, he would launch into a cascading torrent of elegant verse, filled with classical allusions, sharp observations, and often witty digs at the current state of affairs or the foibles of his listeners. He was known to spontaneously compose sonnets, odes, and even epic poems, all delivered with dramatic flair and a commanding stage presence. One notable instance involved Accolti performing for a gathering that included several Medici family members and their allies. He was challenged to compose a poem about the nature of true power. Without hesitation, Accolti began, his voice rising and falling with emotion, describing power not as brute force or inherited title, but as the ability to inspire love and respect through wisdom and generosity. He subtly wove in veiled references to the Medici family's influence, praising their patronage while also, in a very delicate manner, implying the responsibilities that came with such a position. The audience, accustomed to flattery, was captivated by his nuanced and bold approach, which was both laudatory and thought-provoking. His quick wit was legendary. On one occasion, a skeptical critic in the audience challenged him, stating that his improvisations must surely be rehearsed. Accolti, without a moment's hesitation, replied in verse that if his art seemed too perfect, it was only because true inspiration flowed from a source beyond mere preparation, like a clear spring that never ceased to flow. The retort, delivered with a charming smile, silenced the critic and further solidified his reputation. He was a master of extemporaneous debate, turning every challenge into an opportunity to showcase his formidable mental agility. Bernardo Accolti was more than just an entertainer, he was a cultural phenomenon. His spontaneous poetic duels and oratorical displays represented the pinnacle of Renaissance intellectual and artistic achievement. He embodied the Medici's passion for learning, eloquence, and the cultivation of genius. His life demonstrates how the boundaries between scholar, artist, and entertainer blurred in the Florentine court, where the power of words, delivered with intelligence and panache, could earn one immense admiration and influence. Now, he was a jester of the mind, a performer of pure intellect, and his legacy endures as a testament to the captivating power of the spoken word in an age of profound literary and artistic flourishing. Number 4, Giovanni Battista Andreini. The flourishing of theater in Renaissance Italy found a pivotal figure in Giovanni Battista Andreini, a titan of the Commedia dell'arte, whose performances captivated audiences across Europe, including the discerning and influential Medici court. Andreini was not a jester confined to a single noble household. He was a traveling star, a leading actor, playwright, and manager whose company, the Fedeli, frequently performed in Florence under Medici patronage. His entertainment was vibrant, improvisational, and deeply connected to the popular culture of the era, offering a stark contrast to the more formal theatrical productions. Born into a family of actors, Andreini inherited a theatrical legacy, his parents, Francesco and Isabella Andreini, being celebrated commedia dell'arte performers themselves. Giovanni Battista quickly surpassed even their renown, becoming famous for his portrayal of the innamorato character Lelio, the charming and often love-struck young man. His performances combined eloquent rhetoric with physical comedy, music, and spontaneous interaction, creating a dynamic and immersive experience for the audience. The Medici, keen patrons of all forms of art, provided venues, financial support, and a receptive audience for his innovative shows. The Commedia dell'arte, with its stock characters, masked figures, and improvised storylines, was incredibly popular in 16th and 17th century Italy. Andreini's company was one of the most successful, often invited to perform at significant court events and celebrations. These performances were not merely entertainment. They were social occasions, allowing the Medici to display their cultural sophistication and generosity. The records of court expenditures often show payments made to traveling theater troupes, including Andreini's fedeli, for their appearances. One memorable performance in Florence, possibly for Grand Duke Ferdinando I or Cosimo II, involved a commedia dell'arte play where Andreini's Lelio character found himself in a ludicrous love triangle involving a masked harlequin and a cunning Columbina. Andreini's comedic timing was reportedly impeccable as he delivered his lines with exaggerated passion, stumbled dramatically, and engaged in rapid-fire witty banter with the other actors. The beauty of commedia lay in its improvisation, meaning no two performances were exactly alike. Andreini would often incorporate contemporary Florentine gossip or sly references to court figures into his dialogue, delighting the audience and making the performances feel uniquely tailored to the moment. Andreini was also a prolific playwright, penning numerous scenarios and comedies. His most famous work, L'Adamo, a sacred drama, is even said to have influenced John Milton's Paradise Lost. This demonstrates the breadth of his talent, moving beyond mere improvisation to serious, dramatic composition. The Medici, with their intellectual curiosity, would have appreciated this versatility, recognizing Andreini not just as an actor, but as a significant literary figure in his own right. His company's visits to Florence were events of great excitement, and courtiers and citizens alike would flock to see the latest antics of the fedeli. Andreini's Lelio was known for his elegant costumes, expressive gestures, and the way he could switch from comedic despair to joyous exuberance in an instant. He embodied the theatrical spirit of the age, bringing laughter, romance, and sometimes even poignant drama to the grand halls and open-air theaters of the Medici domains. Giovanni Battista Andreini's legacy lies in his profound impact on the development of European theater and his role in popularizing commedia dell'arte. For the Medici, he represented a vibrant, accessible form of entertainment that contrasted with the more formal opera and ballet emerging at the time. He brought the raw energy of the street, combined with sophisticated theatrical technique, directly into the heart of their court, ensuring that the laughter and spontaneous joy of the stage were never far from the powerful family that ruled Florence. He was an entertainer who brought stories to life, filling the air with laughter and the grand spectacle of human folly and romance. Number 5. Giulio Caccini. While not a jester in the comedic sense, Giulio Caccini stands as a towering figure among the Medici's most influential entertainers, a musical innovator whose vocal prowess and compositional genius profoundly shaped the future of Western music. He was a central member of the Florentine Camerata, a group of intellectuals, poets, and musicians who gathered under the patronage of Giovanni da Bardi, a nobleman closely associated with the Medici family and later directly under the Medici themselves. Caccini's work in this circle directly contributed to the birth of opera, fundamentally changing how stories were told through music for centuries to come. Born in Rome, Caccini moved to Florence in the 1560s as a young man, where he spent most of his life in the service of the Medici Grand Dukes, first Cosimo I, then Francesco I, and later Ferdinando I and Cosimo II. His primary role was that of a singer and composer, and he quickly became renowned for his beautiful tenor voice and his revolutionary approach to musical expression. He believed that music should serve the text, a concept central to the Camerata's goal of reviving ancient Greek drama, where music and poetry were interwoven. Caccini's performances were initially more intimate, taking place in private salons and studies of the Florentine nobility. He was a master of monody, a style of singing that emphasized a single melodic line with simple accompaniment, allowing the emotional content of the lyrics to shine through. This was a radical departure from the complex polyphony that dominated music at the time. In his collection of songs, Le Nouveau Musique, the New Musics, published in 1602, became a foundational text for this new style, outlining the principles of expressive singing and accompaniment. The Medici court, always at the forefront of artistic innovation, embraced Caccini's ideas. His compositions and performances were frequently featured at courtly entertainments, masquerades, and especially at the elaborate intermezzi, which were musical and dramatic interludes performed between acts of plays. These intermezzi grew increasingly elaborate, eventually evolving into full-fledged operas. Caccini was a key figure in this development, composing parts of what are often considered the earliest operas, such as Euridice 1600, written for the wedding of Maria de' Medici to King Henry IV of France. His performance at the Euridice premiere was a landmark event. But Caccini, with his powerful and emotive voice, sang the role of Eurydice's messenger, captivating the assembled dignitaries and royalty. His singing was described as incredibly moving, conveying the text with a depth of feeling that had rarely been heard before. He wasn't simply singing notes, he was telling a story, evoking emotions, and bringing characters to life in a way that had the directness of speech, but the beauty of song. Caccini also served as a music tutor to many members of the Medici family and their court. He trained numerous singers in his new style, disseminating his revolutionary techniques throughout Florence and beyond. He was a strict but passionate teacher, believing strongly in the power of the voice to convey human emotion. His influence extended not only to the vocal arts but also to the instruments, particularly the lute and theorbo, which provided the accompaniment for his monodies. Giulio Caccini's life as a Medici entertainer was one of constant innovation and profound artistic impact. He was not there to make people laugh with jokes, but to move them with sound, to tell stories with unprecedented clarity and emotional depth. His legacy is etched into the very fabric of Western opera and vocal music, demonstrating the Medici's crucial role in fostering an environment where daring artistic experiments could flourish and redefine cultural landscapes. He provided not just entertainment, but a new way of experiencing drama and emotion through the power of the human voice. Number 6. Pietro Aretino. Pietro Aretino, the formidable satirist, poet, and playwright, was not a traditional jester in the Medici court, but his caustic wit and fearless commentary made him an entertainer of a far more dangerous and captivating kind. He was a master of lampoon, a wordsmith whose sharp pen could elevate a patron or utterly destroy a reputation. While he never held a formal position as a court jester, his career was inextricably linked to powerful figures including the Medici through his correspondence, his scandalous writings, and his role as a public provocateur. His life was a performance of calculated audacity, making him a figure of both admiration and fear. Born in Arezzo, Aretino's early life was marked by poverty and a restless spirit. He gravitated towards the vibrant intellectual and artistic centers of Italy, eventually finding his way to Rome and Venice. However, his connections to the Medici began early, and notably through Giovanni dagli Bande Nere, the legendary mercenary captain and a cousin of Pope Leo X. Giovanni, known for his ferocity in battle and his unconventional nature, admired Aretino's bold and often crude wit. Aretino often wrote poems and epigrams in praise of Giovanni, effectively serving as a kind of literary publicist and companion who understood the power of language to shape perception. Aretino's primary form of entertainment was his writing, particularly his letters and satirical dialogues. He famously called himself the Scourge of Princes, a title he earned by fearlessly criticizing powerful figures including popes, emperors, and princes. He operated outside the direct patronage system in a way few other writers dared, often extorting money from those he praised or threatened with his satirical attacks. His work, though often scandalous and obscene, was widely read and discussed throughout Italy and beyond. For the Medici, especially those like Giovanni dalle Bande Nere who appreciated bluntness, Aretino offered a form of entertainment that was raw, truthful, and often shocking. Imagine a private reading of Aretino's latest Ragumenti, a series of dialogues between prostitutes that satirized the hypocrisies of court life and religious institutions. While outwardly crude, these works contained biting social commentary that resonated with those tired of polite fictions. Aretino's ability to strip away pretense with words, even if those words were vulgar, was a fascinating spectacle. His power lay in his ability to articulate unspoken resentments and reveal uncomfortable truths, albeit through a highly stylized and often offensive lens. His interactions with the Medici were complex. While he flattered some, he also criticized others. His relationship with Giovanni dalle Bande Nere was one of mutual respect, a testament to Giovanni's appreciation for honest, if brutal, intelligence. After Giovanni's death, Aretino maintained a connection with the Medici sphere, though he largely based himself in Venice, using his powerful pen to influence events from afar. He was a master of political satire, able to comment on the machinations of power with a shrewd eye and an utterly unsparing tongue. Aretino's presence in the historical record, even when physically distant from Florence, acted as a kind of continuous performance. Every new publication, every scathing letter was an event. He challenged the very notion of what an entertainer could be. He was not paid to make jokes, but to make points, to provoke, to entertain through scandal and intellectual audacity. His ability to hold powerful figures hostage with his words made him a unique and terrifying force. Pietro Aretino was the jester who refused to wear a cap and bells, preferring the cloak of the independent observer. His stage was the entire Italian peninsula, and his audience included every major power player. For the Medici, he was a mirror, sometimes flattering, often unflattering, but always captivating. His legacy is one of daring literary rebellion, a testament to the power of unbridled expression in an age of strict social hierarchies. He brought not laughter, but a powerful, often uncomfortable thrill of recognition and scandal to those who dared to read his work. Number 7. Domenico Barlacchi, known as Barlacchia. Among the professional buffoons and jesters who graced the courts of Renaissance Italy, Domenico Barlacchi, famously known as Barlacchia, carved out a significant niche. He was a master of physical comedy, quick repartee, and audacious pranks, securing his place as a beloved entertainer, particularly in the court of Lorenzo the Magnificent, and later, through his connections, even with the Medici Pope Leo X. Barlacchia embodies the classic image of the court jester, a figure whose job was not just to amuse, but to act as a social safety valve, saying things others dared not, all under the guise of foolishness. In records of the Medici household, detailed payments and mentions of jesters like Barlacchia, indicating his consistent presence and value to the family. He possessed a natural comedic talent, capable of turning mundane situations into uproarious spectacles. His humor was often broad, accessible to all, and rarely malicious, focusing more on the absurdities of life and the inherent silliness of human behavior, rather than deep intellectual satire. He made people laugh with their entire bodies, often from the sheer surprise of his antics. Barlacchia's routines varied widely. He was known for his mastery of impersonations, perfectly mimicking the mannerisms and speech patterns of various courtiers, visiting dignitaries, or even household servants, often performing these imitations in front of the very people he was mimicking. The trick, of course, was to do it with such good humor and lack of genuine malice that the subjects themselves could not help but laugh along. He understood the delicate balance between mockery and genuine amusement. One popular anecdote recounted in historical texts tells of Barlaccia attending a lavish Medici banquet. When a particularly self-important guest began boasting about his hunting prowess, Barlaccia, without a word, began to mimic a terrified stag, leaping and snorting around the dining hall, eventually collapsing at the feet of the hunter, panting dramatically. The exaggerated performance was so convincing and hilarious that even the boastful guest could not help but join in the laughter, effectively deflating his own ego without a single insulting word. His relationship with Lorenzo the Magnificent was particularly close. Lorenzo, known for his love of poetry, art, and intellectual discourse, also appreciated the simpler, cathartic release that Barlaccia's humor provided. It is said that Lorenzo would often seek out Barlaccia during moments of stress or, after difficult political negotiations, finding solace in the jester's ability to lighten the mood. Barlaccia was one of the few people allowed to interrupt Lorenzo during his studies or meetings, a testament to the unique privilege afforded to certain jesters. After Lorenzo's death, Barlaccia's renown continued. When Giovanni de' Medici became Pope Leo X, he reportedly brought Barlaccia to Rome, cherishing the familiar presence and humor from his Florentine days. This movement across powerful courts underscores Barlaccia's genuine talent and the universal appeal of his comedic style. He could adapt his humor to different settings, always finding the absurdities to exploit for laughter. Domenico Barlaccia represents the professional jester par excellence. His life serves as a vivid illustration of the important, though often overlooked, role that buffoons played in the grand courts of the Renaissance. He was not just an entertainer, he was a confidante, a provocateur, and a master of the comedic art form, bringing invaluable lightness and joy to the often heavy atmosphere of power. His legacy is one of pure, unadulterated laughter, demonstrating that sometimes the most profound impact can be made with a well-timed pratfall or a perfectly executed impersonation. He was a living embodiment of the joy that could be found even in the most serious of times. Number 8. Morgante the Dwarf. In the court of Cosimo I de' Medici, amidst the grandeur of palaces and the weight of ducal power, stood a figure of singular intrigue and surprising influence, Morgante the Dwarf. His true name was Braccio di Bartolo, but he was known by the mythological name Morgante, a giant from a popular chivalric romance. This ironic nickname, combined with his unique physical presence, made him an unforgettable part of the Medici household and a subject of iconic art. Morgante was not merely a jester, he was a companion, a hunter, a performer, and a figure whose intelligence and personality transcended the limitations of his stature. Born in Italy, Morgante entered the service of Cosimo I around the mid-16th century. Unlike many court dwarfs who were simply kept for novelty or as objects of ridicule, Morgante was treated with a degree of respect, even affection, by the Duke. Cosimo I appreciated intelligence and skill, and Morgante, despite his dwarfism, possessed both in abundance. He was a sharp-witted individual capable of engaging in lively conversation and understanding the intricate dynamics of the court. His presence was not just for comic relief, but for genuine companionship and clever observation. Morgante was known for his remarkable physical capabilities. He was an avid and skilled hunter, a pursuit highly valued by the Medici. Historical accounts describe him participating in boar hunts and other outdoor activities, often with a ferocity and determination that belied his small stature. He was said to be an excellent archer and a brave participant in these dangerous excursions, earning the respect of his fellow hunters and the admiration of Cosimo. This aspect of his life, so different from the typical jester, made him a truly unique figure in the court. His most famous representation comes from Bronzino's double-sided portrait, Morgante the Dwarf circa 1553. One side of the painting depicts him nude, from the front, holding an owl with the implements of a bird hunter behind him. The other side shows him, from the back, similarly nude, with hunting tools and a mask. This portrait is not merely a novelty, It is a serious, almost classical, study of the human form, despite the subject's dwarfism. It suggests a certain dignity and individuality that Cosimo I and the artist recognized in Morgante. The owl on his shoulder is often interpreted as a symbol of wisdom, hinting at Morgante's intellect. The mask on the reverse could signify his role as an entertainer capable of transforming himself. Morgante's role as an entertainer was multifaceted. While he certainly provided amusement through his clever remarks, and perhaps some physical comedy, he was also a living symbol, a conversation piece, and a constant reminder of the Medici's ability to command and patronize all aspects of life, even those considered unusual. He reportedly held court with his own quick wit, often engaging in playful banter with Cosimo and his family. He was a figure of curiosity and amusement, but also one who observed keenly and commented shrewdly on the goings-on of the court. His life at court shows how the Medici, particularly Cosimo I, curated a varied and intriguing environment. They sought out not just painters and sculptors, but also individuals who brought unique perspectives and talents to their daily lives. Morgante, with his intelligence, his hunting prowess, and his physical distinctiveness, perfectly fit this mold. He was more than a mere jester. He was a valued member of the ducal retinue, a friend, and a living piece of art for the powerful Medici. The Morgante story is a compelling example of how individuals, even those born into challenging circumstances, could find a place of significance and even honor within the complex social structures of the Renaissance. He was a jester who transcended expectations, leaving behind a legacy not just of laughter but of respect, skill, and the enduring power of his unique persona, captured forever in the brushstrokes of a master artist.